And you know how the first day, I'm sure they do this with DEA, the first day they go around the room and they tell everybody's background and what they've done. And I really was proud of my background. I think it definitely fits in with the qualifications and the requirements. But there were other people there that were former military or former law enforcement. And you're kind of sitting around saying like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing.
A little intimidating.
You know, I think I'm really lucky because I was a good shot. I was, good at physical fitness. For most of the academy, I had the top grades in my class. And so they put up with me.
Hey, gang, welcome back to this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. I'm your host, Murph. Thank you folks so much for coming back every week. You folks keep me motivated. You keep me looking for the best guests I can find. And boy, I knocked it out of the park today. And I got to tell you, she's the reason we're smiling. We've been talking about just cop stuff before we started recording here. And for those of you that remember, Morgan Wright and I started this podcast 4.5 years ago. Right after COVID or maybe during COVID. And as we're trying to come up with a concept of how to run this show, he called me one day and he said, hey, there's this podcast on. Listen to this lady, how she runs her podcast. She's a retired FBI agent, and see what you think about that. So it just so happens that lady is our guest today. It's Miss Jerri Williams, 26-year career with the FBI as a special agent. She's got a lot more to go along with that. Principally, her podcast is still running, which I think she's into her 9th or 10th year now. She's a blogger. She's an author. She's an unbelievably nice person. I was honored to do a pre-call with her. I felt like I was fangirling a little bit over her, and now we finally get to meet each other here on video. So, Jerri, thank you so much for coming on the Game of Crimes.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I had to admit something. I had to give myself a pep talk this morning because I was feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome because all of your guests have worked drug cases and human trafficking and murders and gangs. And I had a fabulous investigative career, but I worked fraud and corruption. And so I was like, I can't compete, but I have a motto.
What's that?
I have a motto that's on my website, and it is, with a gun, they can steal hundreds. With a lie, they can steal millions. And so I had to remind myself that, fraud is a serious crime too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually read that on your website. That's
so
fantastic.
I'm here to represent the white collar crime agents.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
Okay.
So as you guys can tell, this is going to be a fun interview. We've been doing a little cutting up here before we started recording, and I don't see that stopping. And I surprised Jerri because I got busy this morning. I didn't go to the gym. I went to physical therapy this morning. I got in. My wife forgot to tell me the AC people were coming to work, and she's off on doing her, 18-mile walk in the morning. And when the guys finally left, I'm thinking, oh, I forgot to tell Jerri about the small town police blotter. So I got an article together. She's located in North Carolina. So we found a story about a stupid criminal in North Carolina. I sent it to her maybe 15 minutes before we started recording. She just didn't hesitate. She's like, absolutely. So, Jerri, we have a little disclaimer I read before we do this. People tell me it might keep me from getting sued. Probably not. But this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. Now, we take the show very seriously. Well, we love having to laugh at the expense at some of these stupid criminals that are out there. It's just unbelievable what they do. So if you would, go ahead with your story, Jerri, and let's see what's going on in North Carolina.
All right. I'm going to read this for you here. This is about a lawn guy that hosted a bash with the homeowners away. All right. So the neighbors were not pleased to see dozens of guests flowing into a party in Weddington, North Carolina. I don't even know where that is. But
I was stationed in Greensboro, and I never heard of Weddington.
Okay, but anyway, on Saturday. So they alerted the police to the situation. When authorities arrived, they found Michael Brown, 37, who they said had invited several hundred guests to the event and charged them admission. Well, Michael is definitely a good business
Entrepreneur.
person. Absolutely. Michael first claimed that he was the homeowner and then said he was the grandson of the owner. After several additional epic failures at telling the truth, he finally admitted that he was the lawn guy.
Oh.
And had no relation to the homeowners whatsoever. As for the actual homeowners, well, guess what? They were away on vacation. Police broke up the crowd, and per the press release, many of the party goers doubled down on their criminal behavior as they decided to leave the area recklessly in their cars, which led to numerous traffic stops.
Of course they did.
Yes. Yeah, I'll show them, Well, they were upset. They had paid for a good party and they're being made to leave. I doubt seriously if Michael Brown had like a refund policy, but anyway. Police also noted that there was property damage at the home. Surprise. As for Brown, he was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, injury to real property, obtaining property by false pretenses, and second-degree trespassing. He has since been freed on bond and says he did nothing wrong and that he thinks that the homeowners, will still use him for lawn care. Well, I'm not too sure about that.
I've got a Patreon channel, Jerri, that one of my monthly sections is You Can't Make This S Up. And it's all about stupid criminals.
This is really stupid. I mean, did he really? First of all, these people are hiring him to do work outside. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he, had their permission to be inside their house. But does he really think they're going to keep using him? I don't think so.
Young people these days, who knows what they're thinking, right?
Yeah. Oh. Remember, we used to, when I was in high school and a little older, kids used to have parties at their home when their parents were away and all their friends would trash their home. Does that still go on?
Well, it did in our family, not our house, but my brother-in-law's house. His daughter did that one time, and I know Grandma and Granddad went over there, and I think Granddad took a gun with him to run these kids off. But they ate every single piece of food in the house, including all the condiments, the mustard, the mayonnaise, all that stuff. And he went in and found bologna stuck to the ceiling of the kitchen. I mean, he's just going to trash the place. No respect whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that's what these homeowners came home to, after this lawn guy's party.
Holy cow. And then he thinks they're going to call him back.
Yeah.
Come here and clean up your mess.
You have one too?
Yes, ma'am. I'm down in Orlando, and let me tell you, there are no shortage of stupid criminals in our state here. And this one happens to be from right here in Central Florida, close to where I live. So we've got a Central Florida man. He's accused of trying to electrocute his father after finding out he was the sole beneficiary of the elderly man's will. And this happened over in Ormond Beach. And the cops there said 81-year-old John Knudsen told them his 44-year-old son, also named John Knudsen, held 2 black wires to his chest on Thanksgiving morning.
Oh, Thanksgiving? Okay.
Oh, man. Yeah, so this was a couple of years ago. The police said the older man passed out briefly, but then sneaked out of the house when his son left the room. And it was reported in the Daytona Beach News Journal that cops say the two initially argued after the son was told, "Hey, boy, go get a job." Police said the son is charged with attempted first-degree murder and aggravated assault on an elderly, disabled person. And this one's not so fun, not so much fun or funny, and it is kind of pathetic.
Oh, it's pretty pathetic. Patience. We're all going to die at some point if he'd just been patient. But, I guess he wanted that money now.
Well, and his dad's having to tell him at 44 years old, it's time to go get a job. About 35 years late there.
I think so.
Oh, my goodness. So, Jerri, thank you so much for playing along there. I like to do that just because it kind of gets things off to a lighthearted start, because a lot of things we talk about aren't always lighthearted here.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Yeah. But, and for our listeners, I told you how Jerri and I met. I mean, I just kind of idolized her when we first started our podcast, seeing how successful she is. And she is Game of Crimes is successful, but Jerri's is rocking it. I'm telling you.
Well,
It's one of the
well,
leading
thank you.
it's one of the leading true crime podcasts out there. If you haven't listened to it, it's called FBI Case File Review. I highly encourage you to go over and give it a listen. I think it's audio only. Is that right, Jerri?
Yeah, it's audio only because I am just too lazy to get up and put on makeup and do my hair.
And of course,
I did it for you today, but it takes a lot to.
Oh, let me tell you what, I appreciate that. I told Jerri that's another benefit of not having a whole lot of hair, that I have to go worry about fixing it. So, Jerri, what we usually do in these interviews is start by asking about your background, where you grew up, what your family dynamics were with mom and dad, brothers and sisters, where you went to high school, did you play sports, any good things you want to tell us about growing up.
Okay. Yeah, I have a unique background. I'm an Air Force brat. My father was in the Air Force for 20 years, and he took a lot of overseas assignments and just assignments all over the country. He was a tech sergeant in supply, and so he was in charge of moving stuff, whether it was people or products, around for the Air Force, and he did that all over the world. So I was born at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. And then as a tiny little baby, we went to Casablanca, where in Morocco, where, he was assigned. And then from there, we went to France, Châteauroux, France. We came back and we're in Massachusetts, in Springfield, Massachusetts. And we went to Germany at Simbach Air Force Base. We did that for 3 years, and we came back and we were in Maine, Loring Air Force Base in Maine, and then we were in England for 3 years, and then we came back and we were in Washington State at Air Force Base in Spokane, and then we returned. My father is from Virginia, from Newport News, Virginia, and there's an Air Force Base, Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, Virginia, and that's where he retired. So I went to high school there for 2 years, 2 different schools. And I tell people I'm from Virginia, but as you can tell, I'm cosmopolitan.
I love it.
I'm international. I'm a world traveler. And before I joined the FBI and got to Philadelphia, I never lived anywhere for more than 3 years.
Wow.
My entire life into my 20s, I never lived anywhere for more than 3 years. Then I joined the FBI, and Philadelphia became my home.
Well, you've experienced things that most people just dream about, living all over the world, and we love England, the UK in particular, but Germany and Morocco, and you've just lived a life that most people dream about. I mean, you can write books about that.
Yeah. And I still love to travel. When my kids were young, we mainly traveled in the United States, but Denver, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, we just wanted our kids to see the States. And now that we're older, we're traveling around the world. I just got back from Thailand 2 weeks ago. Wow. Really, it's not even 2 weeks. It's we were in Thailand for 2 weeks, but Argentina, Brazil, Spain, we just keep continuing to enjoy different cultures, and that's exciting.
Our daughter-in-law is a travel agent, and I think she's back from Thailand now. I think she got back last week. But she went over, and when you're a travel agent, you either get the discounted rates or you get the free rates.
Pretty cool.
And the pictures that she was sending back, I mean, this is a 5-star facility. Oh, how nice. Oh, my gosh.
Well, let me tell you one of the most interesting things that I found out about Thailand, because whenever I travel, I try to introduce myself to local law enforcement. And if I can, get a picture, or I may just write a blog post about that particular law enforcement organization in that country, just to give an idea, connect it back to the podcast of my travels. And when I got to Thailand, I actually had lunch. My family and I had lunch with a retired agent who's now living in Thailand. Matter of fact, he's going to be on the podcast next week, and so we met up with him. And then I thought, well, then I'm going to find some local police officers to meet, and I couldn't find any. Couldn't
Really?
find any. I have a picture where late at night we were on a train platform late at night. Not that I stay out late at night. It was about 10:30, and I saw two police officers on a motorcycle, and I took a picture, and it looks like police officers in the wild kind of photo because I'm up high and it's dark and it's grainy, and so I contacted John Sheknowski, who is the retired agent, and I said, "Where are the police?" I've got some unbelievable photos, and I'll share them with you later, of me with police officers in Paris, or with me with police officers in Madrid. Some really great photos. I couldn't even find any police officers in Thailand. So I said to him, "What's up with that?" He said, "Crime is so low that they just don't patrol
No
in
kidding.
the tourist areas." Now, I wasn't in the bar area with the red light district. We all know that Thailand is very famous for that. I was in Bangkok and Phuket, and by 10 o'clock I was asleep. 10:30, that time I took the picture may have been the latest, but otherwise they just don't have, police officers do not have a presence.
That's very encouraging to hear, isn't it?
Yes. So the bottom line is Thailand is safe. Get over there and have a good time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's one place we haven't been. So
it is great. The people are great. The food is great. And the exchange rate is unbelievable. I mean,
there you go.
It was just, we went out to lunch that first day. I understood how far the dollar went, because it was the agent and his wife, and then my family, my daughter, my husband. There was 6 of us, and we had an unbelievable meal because he kept ordering food that he wanted us to try. He wanted to introduce us to. And at the end, it cost us around $60, $70. Something like that in the States would have cost us at least $300 or $400. And I was like, what? So yeah, it's a good place.
And it was like that when my wife and I went to Colombia back, and this was back in the early 90s, but your dollar went so much further down there, and the cost of living was so much cheaper down there. You got to experience things that you lived a lifestyle that we can afford to live here in the United States.
Yeah.
So, and that's exciting.
Yeah, my wife it really was.
It is. My wife and I, we went to, for the first time ever, Vienna, Austria about a month ago.
Ooh,
and
nice.
I was over on human trafficking. The United Nations was holding their annual symposium or conference, and an organization out of Colombia that I support had invited me to be their spokesman because their CEO was under death threats and he couldn't make the travel. But just to go over there and see that, and you see the history, and we're going through these castles and these palaces and these museums, and you're seeing artifacts that date back to 800 AD. And here we in the United States, we see something that's 200 years old. We think, wow, that's old.
That's old.
And then you go over to Europe and it's like, holy cow, that's not just old, that's ancient.
Yeah. Have you been to Prague?
Not yet.
Oh, same thing. I mean, Prague was one of the cities that was not necessarily touched by any of the World War I or World War II, and so a lot of their buildings were preserved, and it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Excellent. That's a place I've been dying to go to Italy too. So we'll see how things go this year or next year.
Italy's next year. We're going to Italy next year.
Oh, nice.
It's my 40th wedding anniversary. That's where my husband wants to go. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
It's funny. Connie and I have been married 41 years, and when Javier and I are out doing our speaking events, and if we tell some personal stories to just kind of bring everybody in, because really nothing to hide. And when I mention that, people applaud. I'm thinking, why are you applauding? Because, I mean, this woman, she gets to live with me. She's the luckiest woman in the world. And she's going to edit this, so she'll probably get slapped over this one.
Yeah. My poor husband, he's so sick of the FBI, hearing about the FBI. He was a high school history teacher and basketball coach. And, he thinks that the FBI is a cult and that, I've been brainwashed. And, he keeps saying to me, I thought you retired, but yeah.
Well, in retirement, we live vicariously through what the real cops are doing now, right?
That's the truth. And we're so lucky because, your show and my show, we get to talk to them and relive, our careers over and over again. So, this is good stuff.
There's the Southern California Gang Conference. I've been supporting them for a number of years. I'm now an honorary member of their board of directors, along with Joe Pistone.
Yes, I know Joe. I
tell you what, when that man calls me, I fangirl every single time.
Me too.
I was coming through just a couple of weeks ago. I was changing flights in Chicago, and I was just getting off a plane, and he called, and I had my hands full, and I couldn't answer the call. So as soon as I got in the airport, I called. I stopped everything to call Joe back. And, when we go to the conference together, we'll spend several days together and just chit-chatting. And I know Maggie, his wife, passed away last year. But I've gotten to know some of his grandchildren, his own children. And it's just, this guy is a walking legend. There's no reason in the world that Joe Pistone should be walking the face of this earth when you know about the things he did as Donnie Brasco.
Now, did you know, or are you going to have on his nephew? Have you heard about that?
Donnie Brasco?
Donnie Brasco.
Yeah, he told me about him.
Yeah, I love the fact that I was able to have the exclusive, worldwide announcement that Joe didn't just think of or make up the name Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
It was really the name of his nephew and of his best friend cousin, Donald Brasco, that he decided to use. And it was just so funny and ironic that the nephew grew up and decided to become an FBI agent and work undercover. And the poor guy, I know him very well. We were in the Philadelphia office together. Our kids we lived in the same town, and our kids went to high school together. But, having to open his creds and introduce himself as Donnie Brasco, throughout his career, there were a lot of eyes rolling. So, you need to have him on the show. He's got some good stories.
Oh, that'd be great. And Joe and I have talked about that, and I can imagine him coming in the office and saying, "Who's this?" "That's Donnie Brasco." "Yeah, right." Right.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well, as well as I do, and we tell this to the listeners frequently, is if you've got thin skin, this is not the occupation you want to go into.
No.
The troops are going to bust your chops. And if they find a weak point, it's just going to be continuous.
Yeah. I mean, I have some hilarious stories, not necessarily, PG stories about some of the things that happen in the Philadelphia office, especially on the bank robbery squad. I don't know if you can get away with it nowadays. But some really fun ways to make sure that somebody's shortcomings are exploited.
That's
exposed and exploited.
I love it. That's the part you miss. It's so much fun.
You do miss that.
And it's, does it sound, for our listeners, does it sound childish? It is childish.
Oh, yeah. But that's what takes the pressure off, some of the things that we're doing.
Exactly. The things that you see out there, a lot of things that you see, people should never have to see in their lifetime. So it just helps you deal with the stress and the anxiety that goes along with the job. Yeah. It's crazy. Now, what did your mom and dad do? Well, your dad was in the Air Force. Did your mom?
Mom was a homemaker.
Okay.
And a lot of the things that I'm doing as far as trying to write crime fiction is because of my mother. She just had a love of books. Since we traveled so much, making new friends could be difficult at times. And so books became my friends. And my mother introduced me to those books. And, I think she died early when she was, 52 and I was 32 at the time. And so, one of my friends said to me, I think the reason that you're so interested in reading and writing books is that you want to do that for your mother. And it really hit me like, yeah, you know what? Absolutely. She wasn't able to do it. So I'm trying to do it in her honor.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. You can see, I don't know if you can see on the shelves behind me here, maybe not, but if whatever guests I have on here, if they have a book, I try to read at least one of their books. I didn't read this much in college.
Well, I had the same thing down on the bottom. I have tons and tons of, I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah. Tons and tons of books. And those are the books of my guest. And I've read every last one of them, take copious notes whenever I have them on to talk about, their FBI stories. So yeah, I love to read. I prefer audiobooks though.
Do you?
Yeah. Cause running a podcast takes a lot of time. It may not look like it, but there's a lot of pre-work in the background. And so I don't have time just to sit down and read a book. But while I'm on my way to the gym, or I'm walking, or I'm washing the dishes, or whatever I'm doing, if I can listen to an audiobook, I've got either true crime or crime fiction story running for me to tap into all the time.
Very cool. Let me ask you a question. Do you get people calling in and saying, "Hey, Jerri, listen, I'm thinking about writing a book. Could you do a blurb? Could you do the forward? Could you read a few chapters and tell me what you think about it?" Or I got a call last night. I was literally sitting here at the desk getting ready to record a Patreon episode. I have a case of the month. And I went over the Brian Kohberger case last night, which is out on patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Get that little cheesy advertisement in there. But the phone rings right before I hit the record button, and it was a retired police officer over in Savannah that's a good friend. Used to have his own podcast, and he's written a couple of really good books. He's been a guest here on the show. And he said, "Murph, I'm wanting to get into writing a script for a TV show or a movie." He said, "I've written a ton of stuff." And he said, "But I've talked to some experts," and he's got a friend that's friends with John Scorsese. Is that how you say the producer out there in California? And he said, "I need to do
Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese. There you go."
Okay.
And he said they told me I need to do like a little short film. And he said, "I've got a script here. Can I send it to you and read it and see what you think?" I'm not an English major. I mean, yeah, you send it to me, brother. I'll read it. But do you get the same phone calls?
Yeah, I do. And if it's a crime novel, because I really think I have a good understanding of writing, a crime novel, I may have a chance to read it, but, sometimes it may take me, several weeks or several months before I can get to it. I'd rather have a conversation with someone and they go over their story, and then I provide them with, my opinion on what is working and what's not working. But I just sent an email out this morning that I created calling Publishing Pathways, where I kind of tell my publishing story and provide tips and information about publishing a book to people that contact me. And I just had a retired agent, reach out saying he's interested in writing a book, and could I, do I have any thoughts for him? And I just sent that email out. So I've already prepared it, and I can just shoot it out to people.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
And that, that just shows the respect that people in the Bureau have for you as one of their own. And somebody that's come out of the job and been successful as an author and a podcaster and a blogger and all the other things that you're involved with. That's just a sign of respect. That's very admirable.
Yeah. Well, I love to give back. I started this podcast, this whole thing, because I wanted to become a crime novelist. And so I started the podcast in 2016. So I'll be having my 10-year anniversary in January. So
wow.
Yeah, so it was January of 2016. The only purpose of the podcast was to find people that would be interested in reading my book, which was going to be coming out 9 months later in September of 2016. So that's why I started the podcast. And I decided to just exclusively interview retired FBI agents, because the characters in my book were FBI agents. But 2016, and I don't talk about politics on my show, but in 2016, we had the election and the FBI was pulled into the, hostile political climate, and the podcast just took off because people wanted to know, who the FBI really is and what the FBI does. And I kind of spent all of my time on the podcast. So the podcast has been successful, especially when you look at independent podcasts. I can't compete with the networks and the studios and et cetera. But now the podcast has become my main source of activity, but I really want to get back into writing books. And I just lost my train of thought. I forgot. I don't know what the point I was trying to make, but
that's all right. I do. That's going to happen to me as we go along here. You'll see.
We discussed earlier that we are basically the same age. So, we understand that sometimes that,
yeah,
the senior moment happens. I just had one.
Yeah, you look a whole lot better than this old fart here sitting there on the screen.
I work a lot on it too.
Well, so Jerri, coming out of school, by the way, did you play sports in school at all?
No, I did not. And I think I would have been an excellent basketball player. When I was in school, the girls were playing basketball by throwing the ball between their legs. You remember that kind of underhand kind of thing? But my daughters were basketball players in high school and college. And my husband, of course, is a basketball coach, and he just went to the NC State women's game last night. He's still supporting women's basketball.
Good for him.
And so I went to a lot of games and really love the sport and wish I had played, but no, I did not. But I consider myself an athlete, and I did really well at Quantico with the push-ups and the pull-ups and the sit-ups and, and the run and all of that. So I miss my calling.
Well, yeah, maybe in the next life.
Exactly.
When did you go straight into college out of high school?
Yes, I did.
Where'd you go to college at?
Yes, I went to college at Morgan State University in Baltimore. Okay. I love that school. It continues to do really well, and also have a lot of athletes coming out of there also. I majored in psychology, and I took a lot of pre-med courses because at the time I was thinking I was going to apply to medical school. And the only reason I did well, and the only reason I didn't is because I couldn't take the MCAT because I couldn't get through the second semester of physics. I waited until my senior year to take the second semester. I didn't need it to graduate. I was a psychology major. It was difficult, and I dropped the class. And so I decided that once I graduated, I would take the second semester of physics, and I applied and took it at Old Dominion University, ODU, in Norfolk. And now I'm working. I'm taking it at night. And I just couldn't do it. I'm organic chemistry, all of that stuff. I was fine with, but that second semester of physics kicked my ass. And
wow.
I am not a doctor today. But guess what? I don't think I would have enjoyed it because I found my calling. When it came to law enforcement and the FBI, I don't think a doctor would have, given me the same type of excitement and joy that my career did.
Yeah, that's a good man upstairs looking out for you.
Yeah.
It's funny because our oldest son graduated college with a dual major in computer information systems and business management. We were living in Atlanta. He moves back in with us, and he's working a job at a bank and just hating life. And a couple of his buddies in Atlanta one was in chiropractor school and one was in med school. And so he was hanging out with them and listened to them talk, and he got interested, never thought about being a doctor. So he goes and does all his pre-med courses, finally gets accepted into West Virginia University School of Medicine.
Wow.
He's now an orthopedic surgeon at Children's Hospital of Atlanta. He does pediatric spinal surgery.
Wow.
And this is the one of our kids that I thought would go to prison at one point in his life.
You're talking about heroes, and you have heroes on your show, and I have heroes on my show all the time. But what your son does, I mean, that's real hero work. Saving lives.
He worked with not Doctors Without Borders, but there's a physician in Atlanta, I think it is, that he met, and they would go to El Salvador for 2 weeks once a year on their own dime. Nobody's funding it. And he was there to do scoliosis surgery on all these poor kids that had the messed up spines. And the first time he went down there, I've got another buddy. It's a former cop, he was a San Diego cop, then a DEA agent, who has a company now that creates covert tracking devices. And with the satellite communications, I mean, you can track them into the mountains of El Salvador. And so I got him to send me one. I gave it to my son. I said, take this everywhere you go. Looked like a GPS device. Mm-hmm. And no, it looked like a battery pack. That's what it looked like. And so I'm checking him every day to see where he is. And one day I check, and it's outside in the mountains, outside of the city of El Salvador. And I got on the phone. And I'm like, where in the hell are you? Get your butt back to town. That's Indian country up there. He's like, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. We're having dinner up here. There's some local military people. There's some local police officers here for protection. Life is good.
Okay. All right. But that was smart of you, though, because you never know. I just did an interview that I'll put up in December about, American citizens traveling and being kidnapped. So it happens,
Yep. It does. And if any of the listeners here are interested in those covert tracking devices, get a hold of me here on the podcast. You can go on the gameofcrimespodcast.com, or you can email me at gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com, and I'll put you in touch with my friend. I don't get a commission off of it, just to be transparent. So, but they work unbelievably well.
Right.
So
I'll have to keep that in mind. I don't go anywhere exotic like that, but yeah, it's nice to know.
I don't think I'd go to El Salvador. Maybe when I was younger, but not now. Not now. I like the vacation stuff. So you come out of, now, did you get your master's?
No, I did not. I started my MBA at Temple University in Philadelphia and was halfway through and started, having kids, and just realized I couldn't hold that up. So did not finish.
I tell you, our lives are very similar in the fact that, I was an agent in Miami back in the late 80s. Florida International University was offering a master's degree, and they actually sent the instructors to the DEA training room in the Koger Center in Miami. And so all we had to do to go to class was walk across the street. It was once a week, and it was 4 hours. But I started working on mine, but then in 89, my partner got shot, and I kind of got distracted with that on the manhunt and just never followed through.
Yeah. So I wasted the Bureau's money because they paid for those courses that I did take. And I wanted to finish. And then it got to a point where it had been a number of years, and I realized, the direction of my career, I didn't need it. I wanted it just to say I had a master's, but I didn't need it to, further my career. So, oh boy, I'm not doing well when it comes to stories about my education.
You're doing fine.
Flunking out of physics, and then quitting my MBA studies. I am a completer. I do complete things, but
if it makes you feel better, I can't even spell chemistry. Okay,
yeah, okay.
So now, how did this idea? Do you have any family in law enforcement? How did the idea of joining the FBI? Where did that come from?
A news article. So I had a psychology degree. I was looking for a position that I could use it in, and I got a job in Newport News, Virginia, as a juvenile aftercare counselor. And I had the kids. It was like a probation officer, but I only got the juveniles that had already been adjudicated and sent out to reform schools and placement centers and group homes and things like that. And so I had to travel all over Virginia to meet with them, to start to work on their transition back to the community, help them go back to school, find jobs, do things like that. So I was really using my psychology because I was also working with their families and counseling them and just trying to, help get these kids back home.
Right.
And I did it for 3 years, loved the job, but it was too much for me. I did it right out of college. So from 22 to 25, I'm a kid myself. I had to admit that now. I probably didn't think that at the time, but I'm a kid myself, and I am trying to mold young people. I mean, the parents were asking me to help them raise their kids, and and some of the girls were, at the time, we know them as being at now we know them as being sex trafficking. But at the time, we were calling them prostitutes,
Right.
and the guys were doing breaking and entering. They were, fighting. They were, doing assaults. And I loved working with them because the bottom line is that they were kids. They were kids that were doing bad things. But I loved working with them. But it was a very stressful job, for someone so young. And I started looking around for what else I could do. And I saw this newsletter that said that the FBI was looking for women and minorities. And so I gave the recruiter a call, and he really recruited me. I mean, he wouldn't let me off the phone. When he
Wow.
heard about my background, what I was doing, he felt like I was ideal for the job. And he was making me promise to fill out that. At the time, the application was about that thick. That was
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the that was part of the process of trying to wean people away and but I filled it out. Next thing I know, I'm an FBI agent. It's like,
Wow.
wow. Yeah.
How long did the process from the time you actually applied until you were hired? How long was that time period?
You would be shocked. 6 months.
Whoa.
I applied in March and I got it in September. And I think at the time the FBI was serious about recruiting more women and minorities, and they thought that I was again an ideal candidate, and they they didn't want to hesitate. So it was mind-boggling. I mean, next thing I know, one moment I'm talking to somebody on the phone, and the next moment I'm walking into the FBI Academy.
Wow. And in comparison, it typically with DEA, it typically takes 2 years. It used to. That's what it took me.
6 months.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
I realize now, when I tell that story, there are many agents, that are shocked. But yeah, that's how long it took.
That's excellent. Excellent. That's unusual.
I will tell you, I always admit this because people were like, well, why were you so interested in the FBI? Well, I knew I could do the job, but what most interested me was the fact that I was doubling my salary.
Yeah.
I was making $14,000 as a juvenile probation officer. And at the time, the Bureau was paying $28,000. So I knew that.
Sign me up.
He signed me up,
Oh, did you come on as a GS9?
Now, GS10.
Okay.
So the FBI, everybody comes on agent-wise as GS10.
Nice. Yeah, our guys come on either a 7 or a 9. And I'd been a city cop for 6 years, and then I was a railroad cop for almost 6 years. And I just wanted to get away from the railroad. I was always interested in narcotics anyway. But so when I finally get hired after 2 years, I report to the office in Charleston, West Virginia before I go to the academy. They said, well, did you get hired as a 7 or a 9? I'm like, I don't care. I don't know, but I don't care. I just wanted the job. Mm-hmm. And luckily, because of my experience, I got as a 9, not realizing how much of a pay difference that was.
Yeah. It's huge.
Excellent
difference.
stuff.
Yeah.
So now you go to the academy. It's 1982. The academy's there. It's Quantico Marine Corps Base, Quantico, Virginia. I actually went through that. The DEA Academy was there in 87 when I went through. Okay. So I've been in those gerbil tunnels we actually, in fact, here in, let's see, what is today? The 20th. In about 2 weeks, Javier and I are going back to the FBI Academy. They've started bringing us in to speak to the National Academy.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
So,
very nice.
It's a blast. Nice. I love it. I love it. But when you got there, what'd you think? I mean, what'd you think showing up? You haven't been around law enforcement really too much.
No. And you know how the first day, I'm sure they do this with DEA, the first day they go around the room and they tell everybody's background and what they've done. And I really was proud of my background. I think it definitely fits in with the qualifications and the requirements. But there were other people there that were, former military or former law enforcement. And, you're kind of sitting around saying like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing.
A little intimidating.
Yeah. And that's really where my problems at the academy, it was not problem free. I think I'm really lucky because I was a good shot. I was, good at physical fitness. For most of the academy, I had the top grades in my class. And so they put up with me. I think if I was failing or weak in any of those areas, I probably would have been kicked out because I was mouthy, you know.
Oh.
Like we would have scenarios. This was before 1982 is before Hogan's Alley.
Okay.
So we did our scenarios, our practical problems around the campus. There was no little town, to role play in, and one of the first two scenarios, the staffing counselor, who the head of the class, was assigning people who had law enforcement military backgrounds to be the case agents or people in charge, and people like me who did not have that active law enforcement background were running around doing leads. And there was one point where my roommate and I were assigned to go find the maintenance person to get some keys to a room. That was our assignment during the scenario. And we are talking and complaining about this, and she had keyed the walkie-talkie.
Oops.
And everybody heard what we were saying.
Oh.
As we were complaining about, she was a prosecutor from Chicago. And, if anybody needs to be trained, this is where we need to learn how to do it. And why is he assigning people that already know how to do it when we should be doing it? Blah, 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 blah. And I see somebody running across a field, and it's one of our classmates trying to let us know that everybody can hear us complaining.
Oh.
Well, the class counselor is not happy about this, and so, you're doing that hot wash after each scenario, and he brings it up, that, we were complaining. And so, I just stick to what we said. Well, you had these people assigned to take these roles that know what they're doing. I mean, if I'm going to mess up, this is where I should mess up.
Exactly.
And of course, the very next scenario, I'm in charge. He puts me in charge. It's like, okay, well.
How'd that go?
You said, it went excellent.
Yeah.
It went excellent, except for it was like a hostage taking situation. And one of my classmates, before we could talk about negotiating and what we could do, he was a former SWAT person, and he shoots the bad guy, holding the hostage. And I know that if I were to have done something like that, I would have been raked across the coals. And the counselor is just, he doesn't want to say anything. And so this guy just gets, oh, good job. It's like, that wasn't a good job. We didn't even try to talk him out of releasing the hostage. But I saw a lot of different treatment at the academy. Again, it was 1982. I'm just being real. Being real. And people don't understand that it was still during what I call the Hoover era. Hoover may have died in 72, 10 years ago, but half the people in the Bureau were still, came in under Hoover. And so they still had some of those attitudes about, women coming in and taking a position that a man with a family, could have had, how dare we? And so there was a lot of that at the academy. And, in my early years, and I always make sure I tell people during that first 4 years, there were many times I would have quit, many times, And the fourth year in the Bureau, where I really was just so broken and disillusioned, and just felt that my talents and my abilities were not being utilized, or as much as I thought they should be. That's when my classmate Jerry Dove, was killed in the Miami shootout.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even today, I remember, we were the Jerrys. I have a picture of us, sitting side by side in firearms. And, he was really a good friend. I went to Sacramento, my first office. He went to San Diego, and, I met up with him and, my sister, and we went out for drinks, and I just kept in touch with him. And so when he died in the Miami shootout was right around the time I was thinking of quitting. And he really spoke to me. He's not going to be able to finish his FBI career. I have this opportunity. I'm going to make it work. And so he was my motivation to stay. The other thing that happened was, and at the time, I wasn't very happy about this, but the special agent in charge of the Philadelphia office came to me and wanted me to head up the hiring program. Now, I've been in the Bureau for 4 years. And I think for most agencies, that's a great retirement job,
Right.
a pre-retirement job where an agent who's been around for a while now becomes the hiring manager, the applicant coordinator is what we call in Philly. And they're asking me. I'm already upset because I'm not getting the type of assignments and stuff that I want to work. And now you want to take me out of investigations. But of course, when the special agent in charge asks you to do something, you just say yes. And so during that time period that I did that, I recruited myself. I was able to just look at the job, and here are all these people that are coming in, they want to do it. And they would ask me questions about, tell me about some of your cases. And I couldn't really give them the stories because I really didn't have those opportunities. I was in the Norfolk office for 6 months, and then Sacramento for a year and a half. And now I'm in Philly, and I'm not working the cases that I want to work. I've been moved to 3 different squads and in that short time period, and I couldn't tell them any stories. And so that was another reason I wanted to stay, because I didn't have an opportunity to show people who I was and what I could do. And so I'm so glad I stayed.
Yeah.
It is the best job in the world. As the saying goes, it's a job like no other. So I stuck it out. And once I finished my time doing recruitment, I came back and got on an economic crime squad and kicked ass.
There you go. Now, so what kind of cases did you want to work that they weren't letting you work?
I've always worked fraud. Even when, you start off working bank robberies and stuff like that, because they're quick cases. But once I got to Sacramento, I was on a government fraud squad, which I didn't like as much because the victim is the government. And so there's not that emotional tie-in where you're really feel like you're helping someone. And so when I got to Sacramento, again, I was doing government fraud. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to work, but it wasn't that. And, but when I got to economic fraud, and I would have people come in that had been duped, by a con man, and they're losing their business, they've lost their livelihood, their life savings, that's when I really got into the work. I mean, I'm fascinated the things that con men and business people, corrupt business people, tell themselves to make it okay to take other people's money.
It's amazing the evil minds that are out there and the concepts that they come up with, and there's absolutely no remorse, no guilt feelings whatsoever. Oh, you're in the poorhouse. Who cares? I'm moving on. I got
Right.
you.
You were stupid enough to fall for my scheme, so it's on you. I mean, that's almost like a gang culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're stupid. I took it. I won it. But these are business people doing with the same attitude. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's very sad.
Very sad.
There was a guy, and I want to say his name was McLeod, and he represented himself as a financial advisor. he got on with he not recruited, but he had a lot of DEA folks as clients, and his returns were phenomenal. This is when I was stationed Special Operations Division in Washington, and I mean, he was doing so well with his returns that SACs were bringing him in to talk. And so our SAC at that time, I don't remember. I got my 15 while I was in special ops, and eventually became the executive assistant to the SAC, which I lovingly refer to as his butt boy, because that's exactly what it was. But I love the guy to death. I'd do anything in the world for him. Still would. And
there's so many ways you can take that.
Well, there were times
I don't know if I wanted to be someone's butt boy, but I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we would have these case coordination meetings. Do you have, DA, FBI, ATF, customs, all the Fed agencies would come in to coordinate these international investigations, and we'd have a big meeting room there at SOD in the building, and it would seat, over 100 people, and the first thing you do, everybody goes around and introduces himself. It takes forever.
Right.
And, I'm standing next to the SAC in the back of the room, and he said, "Hey, I'm Derek Moss, Special Agent in Charge of the Special Operations Division." And I'd say, "Hey, I'm Steve Murphy. I'm the SAC's butt boy." And people would fall out of their chairs. And Derek's looking at me like, "What the hell did you just say?" So it kind of lightened the mood in there, because some of these were confrontational meetings. Yeah. You know how it is. It's my case. I can't tell you what's in my case, but you can tell me everything. I
definitely know how it is.
Oh, it's just crazy. So, but it's just, I mean, I told Jerri at the beginning, this is like two old cops sitting around telling war stories, and that's exactly what we're doing right here. Usually we'd be at a bar and drinking beer, but I don't drink anymore. So
I don't drink at all. So
yeah, but, with you.
Hey, I don't need any alcohol to get me going though.
Me either. And you know what? I still go to the bar with the guys, and they don't care if you drink or not. When it's your turn to buy, it's your turn to buy. Yeah, Murph, we'll get you ginger ale, but set us up with about 12 beers here or whatever.
There you go.
So, I just still enjoy that camaraderie. In the academy, one of the ways I call it punishment, I don't think that they would call it punishment, but when you do things that might be a little questionable, you have to write a memo and explain yourself. Did you ever have to write any memos in the academy?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, it was boxing. Okay.
Oh, yeah?
So in our class, we would box, and they would set you up with anybody. And there was a time that I was set up with the guy and one of the guys in the class that might have been 6'2" or 6'3" and, 200 pounds. And, we were boxing, and he, hit me at a point where we were on a basketball court, the nice slide floors where you can slide around. And I mean, I fell and I scooted across the floor. And when I got up, I wasn't boxing anymore. I was fighting.
You were mad.
And I was mad because of the situation. It was just so ridiculous. And I know they still box today. But if I was in a physical altercation with somebody, as a woman, and he's 6'3", I'm not going to sit there and just box back. And, I'm going to bite. I'm going to use my fingernails. I'm going to go for that special area. And I just felt like this is a joke.
Yeah.
It's like an opportunity to tell the women in the class they don't belong. Because all the women were being, tossed across the room, in these, physical, combat. And it just didn't make any sense, because it wasn't really a representation of what I would do in a fight.
Right.
And so, and they said I lost control, and I had to write a memo, about what happened, and I wrote a memo. I wrote a memo, and, there was a number of things in class that would happen like that, where I would, push against, what was happening. And I remember at the end when just before graduation, they call you in and they do like a report that they send to your next office. And it said that I needed to respect the chain of command.
Oh,
yes. Ouch. It said some other things, but I remember that one very, very well. And, you know,
there was a former guest. I'm looking at my list of former guests here, and of course I can't find it. But she was actually with CIA as case officer, and then joined the bureau. And she went through a lot of similar things that you're talking about, to the point where the recommendation when she graduated. Well, first of all, they didn't believe that she was involved in the things that she was involved with at the CIA, and including the counselors and the class coordinator and the ASAC over that class, and the SAC didn't believe her stories. Well, all they had to do was call CIA, call Langley, and find out, is this true or not? And she'd been through a background.
Right.
And so when she got to her first post, her recommendation was horrible. And she was a kick-ass agent. She was making cases and kicking butts and taking names, but they eventually drove her out of the bureau because of things like that. And the guy.
What year was this? Do you remember?
I don't. I wish I could find her name here, and I might eventually. But the guy that was the hardest on her in the academy, when she decided to leave the bureau several years later, called her and apologized. And he said, wow. You were right. I was wrong the whole time. I'm so sorry. I apologize. And she said he was very sincere about it. But she just finally got to the point where enough was enough. She just.
Like I said, I felt broken during those first 4 years.
Yeah.
Of constantly trying to defend myself. And I hate to say this, but Sacramento, when I was at Sacramento, it was just awful. It was awful. I made a lot of friends, but the situation there was just not good. I was the only Black employee, not agent, employee in the office. There was a guy that worked at night, from midnight to 8 that I never saw, a clerical employee, but otherwise it was just awful. I've never told this story, but I was matched up with an agent to be my training agent who sexually harassed me almost every day.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Oh, your big, beautiful lips. I'd love to, kiss them. And, why don't we swing by your condo? And it was just awful. Yeah. And so it ended up maybe 2 or 3 months. I just went to the supervisor and said, I can't work with him. I actually got him in trouble with his wife. I accidentally, we had some office function and the wife was there, and I said to her something about, your husband, just can't understand that I'm, his partner, and he's always opening the car door for me and opening the door when we get into a building, and I got to let him know that I don't need that. And she looked at me like, what? He never does that for me.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, but the sad thing was, I got to tell you this story. I've never told this story before. I'll probably regret it later. But when I got to Philadelphia, one of the agents there, wonderful agent, I can't think of his last name, but Mike, they both, he worked on Abscam, and this agent in the Sacramento office had worked on Abscam too, just a low level undercover position. And when I told him that the guy's Steve, I won't say his last name, but that Steve, had been a training agent and how bad it had worked out, he said, oh, that guy, he's a hound dog. He said he will try to screw anybody and everything in a skirt. And then I got sad because my supervisor and the people on the squad obviously knew that when I was assigned to him. And so that was the kind of stuff that was happening, and luckily, I have morals and values, and, I was able to get this guy off of me. But what does it say about your squad members when you find out that they knew this about this guy and they still partnered me up with him.
Right.
So those are the kind of things I'm talking about, those first 4 years.
Yeah. And where's the camaraderie? Where's the let's look out for our own?
Yeah. And there's no doubt in my mind that there was probably even a bet, because he was pushing so hard. There's probably even a bet where they knew that he was trying to, get me in the bed,
Yeah.
I wasn't interested.
I remember in the 70s when I was a uniform cop in Southern West Virginia, I remember the first female officer coming on, and it was different. And I'm still very young. I got hired at 19 in 1975. And so I was probably early 20s, and I was still taking college classes, and I didn't have any ill feelings towards a female coming on to be a police officer. You just want them to be able to do the job. And as long as they can do the job that everybody else is doing, what difference does it make? It kills me, like in sports now, especially women's soccer, that because we love soccer. Our oldest son played soccer in college. Our youngest daughter played. And to see, and now our granddaughters are playing. We got 5 granddaughters. And for the women's national soccer team to be paid less than the men's soccer team is just not right. And you look, I don't know if you're a soccer fan, but if you watching the men play soccer is just like a soap opera drama. Right. It just kills me. I can't even watch them. But you watch the women get out there, and when they get knocked down, they get up and fight. They're back in the game, and that's what I want to see.
The thing about women's basketball, remember I told you my husband he's a women's basketball fan, and he says it's because the women play. They play the game. They're not being prima donnas, and they're not, hogging the ball and wanting to be the star. They're playing the game. They're making the passes and the plays as part of a team. And so, right. Yeah.
And as we were talking here, I found the lady's name, Tracy Walder.
I've heard of her. I've seen her around, but I have not interviewed her or talked to her.
She only made it. It looks like I'm looking at her LinkedIn profile. A year and 4 months with the Bureau. She was stationed in Los Angeles afterwards. But she had a great.
Does it say when she joined? It should be there on her LinkedIn.
May 2004.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
By then I would have hoped that they were. Because I left in 2008, and at that time, I guess I had proven myself over and over and over again. And so I had a wonderful career with, agents coming to me and asking me questions and asking me, for help on their investigations. So I'm surprised that she was still getting that kind of pushback, negative pushback in 2004. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, because she was episode 39 here on the Game of Crimes. That was back in March of 2022. The big problem stemmed from her, like that first day in the academy, you're getting up telling everybody where you're from and what you did, and she's telling all these stories, and they were so incredible that people didn't believe them. And she got stuck with that stigma at that point, which continued throughout the academy. And then she goes to LA, and of course the report goes out that, not sure that she's totally truthful about her past. And she was. And she's written a book. Her book's called The Unexpected Spy, which came out in 2020. But what a nice professional lady. Yeah. You hate to hear things like that. Just like you're talking about yourself, what you had to endure. That's just not right.
Right. But again, I'm hoping, just hoping that none of that is going on now. I think there's like 23% women in the FBI at now. When I came in, it was about 5%. And the number of Black women in the FBI has never been more than 1%. I'm sure it is so less than that now. And the number of Black agents in the FBI has never been more than 5%. And I'm always hearing, I had to say this because this will be my opportunity. I'm always talking to people and they were saying like, yeah, I tried to apply for the FBI, but as a white guy, I wasn't able to get in. And I'm thinking there's only 5%. There's never been more than 5% Black agents. So why are you telling me that story? It certainly wasn't a black agent that stopped, you as a white agent from being hired.
Right.
Anyway, you have got me talking about stuff that I would never talk to anyone about.
Hey, we got an exclusive here on Game of Crimes.
I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm just
Right.
keeping it real, telling the truth about those early days. But again, as as somebody who's been writing and podcasting about the FBI, I am so proud of my time at the FBI. I'm so proud of the agents and support staff in the FBI. So I'm just telling my stories,
I love it.
and it has no reflection on how I feel about the FBI or law enforcement in general. Yeah, we can do better.
I didn't agree with everything my bosses told me throughout I was a cop for 38 years, 26 with DEA. Most of the time they didn't ask me my opinion. So
that's
Jerri,
the truth.
Jerri, we've been going well over an hour now. So what I'd like to do is let's call a stop for today's part and bring you back for tomorrow, episode 2, part 2 of your interview here. We want to get into some of the investigations that you worked on, hear about some of these fraud cases, and then we'll get into life after the Bureau, all the cool things that you're doing now. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again so much for joining us here today on the Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. This is one of the most raw interviews we've done, and I can't thank Jerri enough for being so transparent and open and honest about her career, because it's not all a bed of roses. There's lots of challenges in law enforcement, and we challenge those that are weak. And when you stand up to them, that's how you earn respect and pride within the organization. So come back tomorrow. We're going to have some great stories for you. In the meantime, stay safe out there. We'll see you then.